Now, clerk wishes to address the auditorium.
I understand that there's some problems with people leaving the auditorium and not being able to get right back in. Unfortunately, we're already past capacity in here. We have no choice. The police officers can only allow so many in. If you leave the auditorium and you want back in this auditorium, you're going to have to wait by the door until someone else leaves. Otherwise, you have to go to the auditorium. I'm sorry, to leave this gymnasium. You may not get back in until someone else leaves. We cannot take any other electors in the gymnasium. We are past capacity. Okay, I just have a couple announcements. We are obviously beyond our quorum. The police officers, would you please get me a trip count? Thank you. I just have a few reminders for anyone that wasn't here last week that the restrooms are across the lobby area. And then secondly, that the exits seriously are here and behind you. That obviously you can see that in the auditorium. There are exits on the left and right of the stage and in the back. We do have, utilizing the auditorium, we have to be patient with these counts. It does take a little more time and a little more effort to get the votes in from the auditorium.
There is no sound.
Okay, he's working on it. And of course, we're going to have these little technical problems back and forth, but I'm asking that you please be patient with it. The moderator has a bigger viewing monitor, so he should be able to see anybody going in the auditorium up to the microphone. They have just as much right to speak. And a quick reminder would be that we are all one community and neighbors. We meet in the shops, we meet in the schools, we meet in the churches and the ballparks. Everybody has the right here to debate and to argue and at times raise your voices if that be. But we need to remember to do this in a civil and respectful manner. We absolutely will not be tolerating certain behaviors that went on last week. We have added police officers on, and you will be asked to leave, therefore losing your vote. Okay, enough. I just have one other comment. I had a lot of calls during the week about minutes from the last meeting and this, that, and the other. Obviously, they are not done. But the clerk did prepare a summary of where the meeting ended, of what was on the floor when the meeting ended. It's on a blue paper, and only a blue paper. They were handed out. They were on the table at the back. Any other reports that we had from any administration, if we had any left, were also placed on tables in the back, and we have plenty of extra dockets. Okay? As soon as we get the count, I'm going to reintroduce the moderator, Mr. Michael Smith. Okay, you want to tell him that? Okay, we may have to wait a couple more minutes because we've got to get the sound. There's a problem with the sound in the auditorium, so please be patient. We're doing it as quickly as we can.
Sound is good.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The sound in the auditorium has been fixed. So now we're at full operation. Right. One of the texts. We're still waiting on the count at this point.
That's right. Who is? Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. That baby. They didn't see your poses yet. There's sister-in-law. What's that? Frank's working the crowd. Frank's in the blue jacket, re-up from the he's definitely right. He helped a lot with the high school building project. All we need is like a juggler to come out, entertain the crowd. Yeah, that's all. Just want to make sure you have it. Gotta get these numbers down.
At this point, everything is very simple.
Got her hands full. Nancy's the type right now, you don't bother her with anything. You just let her do her job. Otherwise, she'll tell you. Here we go. Take a picture of this. Just drop the shirt on this because wanted a smaller coffee today. He doesn't know. There's a missile with his name on it. It's a tomahawk. Gotta come flying out of the ocean.
This is new record.
New record.
No, we have They were,
That means
they came in the back of the room and said we have,
They've endorsed
the count with the auditorium is 1354. We have quorum.
Because that's on the outside. decide what's good at it. In the auditorium, and make sure it's above board.
It's been brought to my attention. Those individuals that do not have a green wristband that are not registered voters need to be sitting in the auditorium, except for those, of course, that were invited to sit up here. So anyone that does not have a green wristband and is not a registered voter, and if you are a registered voter, you will have a green wristband, please exit to the auditorium. Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. We all rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There he goes.
When we left last week, it was voted that we will continue debate on the amendment from Ms. Was it Pacelli? Pacelli. Pacelich? How do you say it? Pacelich? Polich? Okay. So now we are continuing debate on that.
Microphone.
Are the floor mics on?
You gotta have all the microphones.
Mike,
There you go. Is there any further debate on this motion?
Mr. Moderator, since this is my amendment, I would like to go first, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Effective budgeting is thoughtful and deliberate. It should bring together perspectives and interests of our professionals. It should be systematic and reasonable. Budgeting is not a guess. It's not a series of what-ifs. If you look at page 4, you can say, what if the state aid doesn't come in? What if the housing aid doesn't come in? What if Calpine, Tiverton Power goes bankrupt and that revenue doesn't come in? We can sit up here all day and we can deal with what ifs. And if any of those what ifs happen, guess what? We'll be right back here because we're the only ones that can appropriate a tax. We need to use our common sense. We need to use the facts that are in front of us. My amendment is a legal compromise that proposes an increase in total general school expenses of 2.5%. The local appropriation is an increase of 4.1%. If this amendment is approved along with the town council's request, which I support, general expenses will go up 2.8%. This amendment is a fact-based budget that asks taxpayers to give more to make up because the state is giving less. The school committee voted to support this amendment, and I appreciate and thank them for that. I urge that all of you support this amendment, support our services, support our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, Jay Lambert, Sunset View Drive, I ask to be recognized.
Chair recognizes Mr. Lambert.
Thank you. This morning when I was making some notes, wave your hand if you can't hear me, please. I want to make sure I'm communicating with everybody. Okay. When I was standing at this mic earlier this morning, I got some reinforcement for the issue that I want to raise with you. Bobby Martin, who all know, came up to me and said, I have a question, Jay. Is the school committee saying that we're responsible for the total appropriation, or are we just responsible for the local sources, the local taxes? And I'm trying to answer that question. And so you know where I'm going. I'm urging you to reject any proposal that would include state and federal estimates. Last Saturday, Mr. Burgandy for the school committee proposed a total appropriation of $25 million plus. The amount requested from local sources was almost $21 million, and the amount estimated from all state and federal sources was $4,641,742. We were offered some assurance by Mr. Burgandy that we could expect the state and federal aid to come in as estimated by the school committee. Well, as you know, Webster's definition of estimate is, quote, a rough or approximate calculation. Not stated by Mr. Burgandy and not stated by others is the position of the school committee that Tiverton's taxpayers will be liable for the full amount of the total appropriation. You are essentially being asked by the total appropriation to guarantee all sources of revenue, local, state, and federal. And Ms. Palish's total appropriation, as recommended, also includes all state and federal sources. I just want to briefly review the history of how we got to this point.
I'm sorry, sir, that would not be called for at this time.
I'm sorry?
That would be kind of out of line at this time. That's just going into a lengthy.
Let me conclude. It's my understanding that I had 10 minutes, and you've had speakers such as Ms. Palish, who have already spoken 4 times on the same issue. Here is my point, and so that there's no misunderstanding, I'll direct the question to Mr. Burgandy. Am I correct that it is the position of the school committee that the total appropriation will be the legal obligation of the taxpayers of Tiverton? And if there is any shortfall, either in state or federal aid this coming year, the taxpayers of Tiverton have to make it up.
Correct. Could I answer this?
Yes.
As we said before, we asked for the opinion from the state, and we got that opinion. And this clearly states that it is the responsibility of the community to educate the children. It's beyond that. Let me finish, please. It's beyond that. This is actually the only service which has to be provided by the community based on Rhode Island Constitution. So theoretically, that's what I'm advocating, but theoretically, you could have no fire department, no clerk in the town hall, no policeman on the street. You still have to provide education to the kids. Now, our question was, because obviously we understand, we hear all the taxpayers, including TCC. Our question was, who is right? Because otherwise there are 2 parties arguing an issue, and all of you taxpayers have to be the judges who is right and who is wrong. Now, in order to help everyone to make legally the decisions within the Rhode Island law, we asked the Commissioner of Education for that opinion. Because by statute, the Commissioner of Education has to provide legal advice to school departments. We are all elected officials, we have different jobs, we are not lawyers. And even take a lawyer from the one side and a lawyer from another side, and you will be the court, you will be the jury. You have to figure out what to do. So we asked for that opinion, and the opinion came in, and we provided this opinion to everyone else. During our school meetings, during our school meetings, school committee meetings, and as a copy here to everyone, and it states clearly that the town is responsible. It's illegal to provide an appropriation here which is only for local aid. You have to provide the whole number. Now, to answer completely your question, because there's another part to this, is yes, the town is ultimately, because of Rhode Island Constitution, is responsible for educating the children. Now, we are trying to be responsible in the context of this because we can go, if you are going to go in this direction, that only local appropriation will be voted on, and we cannot fulfill our obligations to educate the kids based on BEP, then there's only one legal obligation we have to do, as much as we would hate to do this. It would be to have a lawsuit, neighbor against neighbor. But by our statute, we will have to do this. So what we have to do is act responsibly. Unfortunately, I didn't do it, and you didn't write Rhode Island Constitution, and you didn't write the statute. You can vote for reps. You can change this in the future. But we have to deal with the law as it's stated today. And please tell me what else would we do except ask for this legal opinion provided to you. And you be the judges if it matters what the legal counsel to the Commissioner of Education is saying or not.
You know, Mr. Burgandy, that our town solicitor has also written an opinion and come to the exact opposite conclusion.
Correct.
I think your answer to my question is yes.
Absolutely.
If there's any shortfall, and according to your motion, if the shortfall is either on the state level or the federal level, the people in this audience have to make up the difference. And I want to point out to everyone an article that appeared just yesterday in the Newport Daily News indicating that the Department of Education in Rhode Island has now proposed for next year almost a $1 million cut for Tiverton in state aid.
Mr. Moderator.
That was the formula that they proposed. If that takes effect,
Mr. Lambert.
all I want to make sure is that the people understand what
You
their
are,
obligation is.
you are no longer in order at this point. Please
Mr.
take your seat.
Moderator. Mr. Moderator. I'd like to be recognized, please. Mr. Moderator. There's an important point that's being missed here, and it has to do with the $4.6 million in state and general aid. But before I get to that, first of all, if you read the same story that Mr. Lambert just referenced, it says any state aid formula will not go into effect for at least 2 years after positive revenue streams have come into the state. And there are 3 different funding formulas that the General Assembly is looking at. And those are total state aid numbers. What our number represents is operational aid. And that's the number that we've always put forward. And what you have to understand is, if this question, or I'd like to pose this to the public, if our aid number was going to disappear as been alleged, why is $5.2 million on the revenue side on page 4 in the docket? So the Budget Committee was counting on $5.2 million as part of their revenue stream. Now we're hearing, oh no, your $4.6 million isn't coming in. My question is, which is it? Is it the $5.2 million that's in the docket, and you told the public that you're going to get a revenue stream of $5.2 million, or we're not getting any revenue? In my mind, that math doesn't add up. It can only be one or the other. And secondly, you're being taxed, the voters in this town are being taxed on the $20,879,040 that Mrs. Polish has recommended. And as Mrs. Polish said, if a meteor came down and struck us now, what if? Well, what if all our aid left? That's what people are being told. All our aid is going to disappear. And that's simply, it's baseless, because no one has said it. We have assembly members here. I'm sure they can reassure us that there hasn't been discussions to that effect. So our numbers are accurate. Our numbers have been out since January. We've been modifying our budget. As Mr. Burgundy said, we've had numerous meetings. And now at the 11th hour, to say that we're not going to get state aid is simply disingenuous. Because if that was the case, when we had our one meeting with the Budget Committee back in February, someone on that Budget Committee should have said, you're not getting any state aid. And they certainly shouldn't have put it in the, on the docket as $5.2 million based on a number that no one has even looked at. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
I have microphone number 2 here.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Nelson, Peaceful Way. I'm president of Tiverton Citizens for Change. I'd like to offer 3 points on Ms. Pellish's amendment. The first being that this calls for an increase of over $800,000. The second is that it calls for and will provide over $500,000 in pay raises for teachers.
Not true.
And the third is that it breaks the state cap. So we ask everybody in attendance here today to please vote this down. The town cannot afford this amendment.
Mr. Moderator,
I have another ahead of you in the auditorium. The auditorium is speaking first. We need sound in the auditorium. I don't have them. We can't hear you in the auditorium.
let him come in here.
It's illegal. You have to provide the same rights to everybody. That's why.
Still nothing. All right, we still have no sound in the auditorium. We're going to go to someone here, and then when it is fixed, we'll go immediately back.
Mr. Moderator, could it be recognized, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Brian Medeiros,
Excuse
27.
me, I think I was standing here before he was. If we're going
I don't
in
think so.
order.
I
I was standing here clearly before he was. He wasn't
Supposed
even
to alternate
standing.
anyway.
He got up right after.
You're supposed to alternate sides anyway. Everyone will get to speak. Brian Medeiros, Grinnell Avenue. Just on this question of the including the federal and the state aid, people need to be clear on one thing. Regardless of whether you put that into the motion, which is what the state says you're supposed to do, you can do as the Budget Committee did and ignore the state law and say we're not going to include it. The state law says it should be included. But if you choose not to include it, all we are going to be voting on today in the tax levy is the local part of this, which is the $20 or so million. We are not going to be voting for the full $25 million regardless. There may be a legal decision later on or a legal debate over whether if suddenly all that aid dries up, whether the town the taxpayers are responsible for that. There's at least a certain amount of that if it all dried up, certainly the school committee would have to come to the town council and say, perhaps we need to hold a special town meeting and appropriate more money. But we, the voters, will have the say at that point whether we want to appropriate more money. All we're going to appropriate is the local part today, whether you include the other aid in the motion or not. So don't let people convince you that there's a 22% increase and that sort of thing. It's simply not true. It is 100%. It is 100% certain we will not be appropriating 22% or any of that state or federal aid. We will not be obligating ourselves to anything today by voting on that, any more than we're already obligated, whether or not that's included in the motion. That's very important that people understand that. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Larry Miranda, Hobson Avenue in Tiverton. And for those who don't know, I was on the school board here for 4 years. And I did a lot, and I believe a lot in education. I came here, and my children came here. We got good educations. However, that being said, and I wanted to give that as a background, we're voting today on an appropriation for the school department, of which, as far as individual line items, we have no consideration for. Ms. Polish's appropriation for the school department on local part is $20,879,000. We've heard a lot about, now I've read about Fort Barton closing or closing the high school or whatever the case may be, and affecting the children. I want to say this as a taxpayer. There are 400 people who got, and I'm not one of them, so I'm not coming with a biased opinion here, 400 people who got delinquency notices on their property taxes. There are 924 delinquency notices that went out. Okay, that's only 4,900 residences in this town, 6,500 total properties. So depending on your math, that's anywhere from 6 to 8% of the people are behind. And I questioned the people on the school board that mentioned closing the high school, and I'm going to say the following. There are positions that I know that can be cut. We have 3 elementary schools with 3 principals, 3 nurses doing the same thing that it transpires at this high school with 1 principal, 1 nurse. Same thing at the middle school, 1 principal, 1 nurse. And finally, if I may, and I'll walk away, there's an additional position. If you look at Mr. Martin's amendment, it's $212,000 less. It's 2 principals are over $200,000. In addition to that, when I was on the school board, there was a change taking place in math and in science between the middle school and the high school, and because those teachers wouldn't talk to each other, and because those department heads wouldn't talk to each other, I recommended and created and got passed a new organization for the school system. We got rid of the assistant superintendent, but we brought on a position that was supposed to be temporary, and that is called the curriculum coordinator. I am not picking on people, but that's over $300,000 that doesn't affect 1 student, 1 program. Thank you.
Do we have sound yet in the auditorium? Apparently not. No? Go ahead with that. Auditorium, speak. I think I just heard you.
Tess, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Michael Roderick, Bull Marsh Road, Tiverton. It kind of dovetails with what the gentleman just said. We're going to vote on a budget that represents 65% to 70% of the town's total budget. And we haven't seen a breakout of the budget. We see a breakout of the fire department, a breakout of the police department. How come we can't see a breakout of the school department budget? And then we're going to vote on it.
Mr. Moderator, I could answer that.
Yes, Mr. Karen.
Jeff Karen, Chairman of the Budget Committee. To the person who asked the question, there's the budget is represented in the docket as 1 line item, and there is state law which prohibits, which gives the school committee exclusive control of the money. So as a result, there really isn't a whole lot that voters or people can do to adjust the line item dollar amounts. The school committee did provide to the budget committee and has made public their backup for this, which is a rather lengthy document. Years ago, even before I was on the committee, it's my understanding that the budget committee would get into the details more, and I think that the school committee at some point gave some pushback on that, and for the last few years the budget committee has just been recommending a total amount and basically heeding to the argument that the school committee has complete control of the dollars. Thank you.
Moderator, I ask to be recognized. Jeff Belli, Birch Street.
Jeff Belli, this gentleman over here in the middle.
It's on the same topic.
He still needs, he was first.
My name is Joseph Souza, 49 Hancock Street. To some, I'm probably a rookie. I've been coming to this meeting since 1992. Over the years, I've heard claims similar that were made with this recent budget that schools would be closed, programs would be cut, and every few years we all come in and we increase the amount of money that we appropriate. But somehow that money seems to get spread out across the school. And then we're here again a few years later, saying the same thing. The school's going to close, which in fact I believe was a lie, because it would cost us more to close the school than is trying to be cut by the budget. My only suggestion here is this. At some point, People like myself that are working are going to retire, and I'm going to be like a lot of the people behind me, living on a fixed income. Am I going to be able to live in this town if we continue with $1 million and $2 million a year increases in the school budget? I'm not going to be able to. I want to, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to afford it. We need to think long term. We can't come here every year and make one decision. We need to think about where we're going to be 10 years from now. We know that our state legislature, not our legislators, I personally think we have good legislators, but the state legislature is inept and can't seem to get its act together. We should have went to the 60-40 that people were familiar years ago. Instead, we're back here arguing amongst ourselves over dollars. Everybody wants our children to do well in school. Everybody wants to provide sports programs. But it is a matter of how much we can afford. All I'm asking is this. Vote down Deb Palish's amendment and vote up Mr. Nelson's amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman in microphone 3.
Jeff Belli, Birch Street. My question pretty much reiterates the same as the gentleman that was in the auditorium. We sit here and squabble about over $20 million. You say the school department has anonymity to disperse the money as they want. But we sit here and argue, but you're not giving us any numbers of where these numbers are going. You're not telling us what's being spent on what. We wouldn't be arguing if you would tell us where this money is going. You're not required to, but go the extra mile and do it.
Could I respond to this, please?
Is that it? Yes.
As this gentleman is addressing school department, I would like to respond to
I'm
this.
addressing anybody on that panel that can answer my question. Why you are not going the extra mile to provide us the numbers for us to know?
The detailed budget was provided to the budget committee, has been posted on the school's website, and has been discussed at length in every single meeting of the school committee.
Why isn't it not in any of these documents?
Because to put our entire budget together is several hundred pages, and it's impractical to publish our budget for 1,200 people.
Well, not everybody in this room has internet.
Well, everyone can come to a public meeting. And we've had a number of public meetings, and we have discussed this numerous times. And if anyone had an interest, they can go online, they can go to the budget committee meetings, come to our meetings. Our numbers are out there. We've been talking about these since January.
Excuse me, sir. You're out of order, please.
You know, that's all we ask is break it down for us, you know, in layman's terms, who's getting what, and, you know, we wouldn't be arguing about what's being spent on what. We know you have autonomy, but at least break it down for us. Everybody else does.
Mr. Moderator, my turn? Or,
Yes, sir. Microphone 1.
Justin Katz, Arbor Terrace. I'm going to put aside the state and federal aid. It's incorrect to say that the law requires us to include that. It does not. It's a ruling from the Rhode Island Department of Education, and anybody who wants proof that the school committee believes that we are liable for that money merely has to look at Mr. Burgandy's request for local funds, which is above what he's allowed to ask for by law, because he says we have to count federal money in last year's appropriation. But I'm going to put that aside, because supporters of this amendment say it will only cost $2 per week on a $200,000 house. Not only is the average house in Tiverton over $300,000, but that $200 comes on top of $200 already requested by the budget committee. The average homeowner is looking at paying $311 more per year in property taxes. That's $6 per week. Now that may not sound like much to people making $80,000 and not including benefits on the public payroll. But to me, it's a year's supply of contact lenses to wear on a construction site. It's my annual contribution to the Catholic Charities Fund appeal. It's Christmas presents for my children. Yeah, take the money for yourself. And it's not an isolated request. We've had an additional $300 per year every year. People who think that's real money are not a cancer on our community. The tax levy in this town has doubled almost in the past 10 years. That can't continue. And if we can't hold the line during the Great Recession with inflation at 2% or less and a teacher's contract that is still unresolved, then it won't be held in the future just as it was not held in the past. They want us to think that schools will crumble if we don't dig deeper this year in the midst of this recession. If that's true, it means that the people who run our school department have hinged the well-being of our entire system on a single vote of this body, which often swings by 20 people or less. This despite the fact that they got $1.2 million in a gift in federal dollars this year. Don't believe the threats about closing schools and ending programs. I still believe that the majority of the school committee will side with the students over the employees when it comes down to it. And if they don't, they will have handed some of us an unbeatable platform on which to run against them in the next election. Vote this amendment down.
Yes, lady in the middle, please.
Carol Herman, Main Road, Tiverton School Committee. We have not budgeted $500,000 in pay raises. We have budgeted 0% for teachers, for administrators, and for support staff. Let me repeat, 0% for all school employees. Our total salary line has increased less than 1%. That increase is largely due to the fact that we must now pay for positions that have previously been funded by grants. Voters should also know that with the exception of last year, Tiverton has voted a total school budget, including estimated state aid, for at least the past 15 years. And the schools have never once come back to the town and asked for more money to make up for a shortfall in state aid. Never once. Finally, as to whether cuts will be necessary or not, please consider this. If the Budget Committee's number passes, it will be the second year in a row that the school department will receive a $1 increase. We will be forced to make drastic cuts, including the closing of an elementary school.
Mr. Moderator, may I respond to that?
Yes, Mr. Karen.
Thank you. I'd just like to respond to 2 points there. One of them made just a minute ago that the school has never come back to the town for more money. We just witnessed that happen a month ago when they're in the development of this RIDE opinion that the numbers for last year's appropriation, the $20,047,960 that this body appropriated last year, jumped up by $20,000 or $30,000 because aid was short. We just saw it happen this month, okay? And if you trace the numbers back, you'll see it. There's about a $30,000 differential because aid was short. So it does happen, and it just happened. Thank you.
Can I respond
Point
to
of
that?
information?
Or can Mr.
Yes.
Fiore, our school department business
Yes.
manager, answer as to whether we went back to the town and asked for an increased tax levy?
No, we've lived within our appropriation for at least the past 15 years. We have not gone back to the town for an additional appropriation.
And the appropriation, what Mr. Karen is referencing, is part of the Commissioner's advisory opinion on how to calculate the 4.5% increase. And we got the opinion from RIDE, and we decreased our request because we were looking for guidance, just like the committee said they were going to do. And it's not a 22% increase. Our number that Mr. Burgundy's put forward is a 4.5% increase, which is allowable under state law. And with Mrs. Polish's amendment, I believe it's a 4.1% increase. So no one's over the cap. So if someone wants to do the math with us, we'll be happy to do the math. But the math is the math. Thank you.
Yes, lady.
Point of information, Cheryl Morgan, Nanaquacket Road. Mr. Moderator, we have about 800 more people this week than we had than last week. I believe that it's based on the telephone calls that the Tiverton Citizens for Change solicited to the community. I think this was a scare tactic aimed at the seniors and the disadvantaged and the uninformed. So I would like for the Dave Roberts to clarify some of the issues about this 22% increase. I've lived here for over 40 years. It's never happened. And I think that, in point to Mr. Souza, I agree that, you know, we really need to control a little bit more, but 22% in these scare tactics for the seniors is just, it's unnecessary. So I would like to ask Mr. Roberts if he could come up and discuss and clarify the 22%.
Mr. Roberts?
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. That is not what's on discussion on this, on the floor right now. Ms. Polish's issue and amendment is what is in discussion, not anything Mr. Roberts said.
The impact on the tax rate is...
I will allow Mr. Roberts to speak to the matter.
Just simply, I'll just address the 22% in... I'll just address the 22% in the tax levy. Regardless of what vote is taken, I cannot include state aid in the tax levy and the tax bills that get issued to the residents of the town, because that would be taxing for state aid that is budgeted to come into the town, so it would be illegal for me to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And microphone 1, please.
Mr. Moderator, name is Chris Carter, 52 Harris Drive, Tiverton. I got a couple of points I'd like to make. One is about this this levy issue on this 22%. Being prior chairman of the Budget Committee for about 15 years, first of all, I want to represent that historically, every docket that we presented as a Budget Committee detailed exactly what the full amount of appropriations were being asked, including state aid. We've done it historically for years. It's only been recently, since I've been off the committee, that it hasn't happened. And unfortunately, I wasn't here last year to address it. But quite frankly, the state aid number that's included within the educational piece, Mr. Roberts is correct. You're not getting taxed on that today. And if for some reason, and I've watched the state budget for as many years as I've done the town budget, I cannot envision any legislator decreasing the amount of educational aid. It just will not happen. But that's a personal opinion. So what I want to convey is, if any portion of that was reduced, one, there's no tax revenue right now that would be appropriated to fund whatever it is that we would need to do. Secondly, there's no money in the general fund reserve to use as a buffer to go to, so it would require the school committee, the school administration, it would behoove them to sit on, which they've done in the past, by the way, and I'll explain, because we've been through this before, that any reduction of an outside revenue source beyond the levy of what is the local appropriation, the school would have to do its due diligence to find cuts within the system. Now, to the extent that they get to the basic educational plan and they cannot sustain those cuts, they would have to then go to the town council to request a special financial town meeting to then reassess and give you the opportunity to come back and vote on that request. All you're doing today is informational. And I'm just baffled by the fact that somehow there's a scare tactic out there that the state is going to cut educational aid. I don't foresee that. I would see that, entitlements would be cut before any legislator or governor would cut the backbone of this community or any community, because educational aid, if you don't fund that, you're just going to put more people on welfare in the end. And that's just not their theory. Secondly, my other point is, there's been a number of people who have addressed why isn't the school committee's budget very detailed in this docket. I'm somewhat astounded by, at least when we presented our dockets years ago, we did do an analysis, and we would show you generalized categories such as salaries, benefits, the entitlements, not the entitlements, the operational costs like heat, light, power, the stipends, or special education stuff. the budget committee historically would always go through, and we had many meetings going through, and I can tell you that the school committee would supply me with a box of information that the budget committee would go through with a fine-tooth comb. And we would have very long arguments about what we thought were appropriate expenditures, and we would come up with a list where we would say, well, maybe we don't need this Spanish class, or maybe we're paying too much for oil, or maybe you're going to have 3 retirements this year. And we would come to a point where we would reconcile that with the school. By and large, for the most part, we would come to some sort of gentleman's agreement about it and come here and vote en masse as a group to do what was right by the schools. You're not getting that analysis today. You're getting, this is what I want to pay for taxes from a budget committee, not a full review of what they think should be cut out of this budget.
Okay, we're going to the gentleman in the middle aisle, and then we're going to the auditorium.
Curtis Swinehart, Briarwood Avenue.
Can you speak up, please?
Curtis Swinehart, Briarwood Avenue. I think it's somewhat disingenuous that we include the state and federal aid number in this vote, because if the state or federal aid were to increase, we wouldn't get that back as a tax refund or into the general fund. It would just be spent by the school. And as such, that doesn't make any sense. So we should vote against Deb's amendment and vote for the Nelson amendment.
Auditorium?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Speak
thank
a little
you.
bit louder.
A little bit louder, okay. How's that? Stuart Horwitz, 128 Ablehart Lane. First of all, I just want to say we're relatively new to town. Very impressed by the passion and the commitment of everybody that's here. I'd love to
We're
move
losing
to
you.
a,
You need to speak a lot louder.
I'd love to move to a vote relatively quickly. I think I probably speak on behalf of a lot of people when I say that.
Still cannot
I
hear
think
that.
everybody needs to vote their conscience, but I think there's one thing that's not being discussed. We're talking about property taxes, but I don't know that we're talking about property value. $6 a week or whatever this, whatever it turns out to be, to me feels like a relatively decent investment in your property value. I don't know how many people are planning on retiring and living in the same house that they're living in right now until the end of their lives. Okay, I don't think I am. Okay, we moved here because the schools are really good. I don't think we're talking about that. We're talking about the percentage of the budget. We're talking about, what a principal is going to make, an assistant superintendent. But are we talking about the fact that the Tiverton public school system is amazing? And are we talking about the fact that that's bringing a lot of people to town, which is increasing everyone's property value? Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Mr. Moderator, Bob Martin, Hilton Street. I came here confused. I am still somewhat confused. According to Mr. Burgundy, he claims that the schools would come first, would close the fire departments, close the police departments, close all of that stuff. That to me is nonsense. What I would like to know is which laws we have to abide by and which we don't. And I would call on a town solicitor to maybe shed some light on that.
So basically, the question is, what
Well,
laws do we have to abide by in this budget?
Correct. Mr. Burgundy came up with a law that came from the school department, Board of Education, and I understand there's some state laws that are contradictory to that. Which ones do we have to abide by?
Mr. Titus?
I'm not offering a general response here, but the specific question, as indicated in my memo to the town council on March 3rd, I believe that the town can only appropriate the local levy. The town can consider what expected sources of other income there are, whether it be from the state, the federal government, or Bill Gates and his foundation. The town can consider those sums
But in the end, as the tax assessor indicated, you are voting on a local levy, and the town appropriates that much money. It is my opinion that if the higher number of aid does not come through, it is not the responsibility of the town to make it up. The school, please, the school committee has the ability to come to the town for a special financial town meeting to ask for additional funds. If they disagree with the legal interpretation, they have the ability to go to court, but it's my interpretation that they don't have the ability to demand the additional funds from the town. And I want to point out further that it goes both ways. If they get more money than estimated from outside sources, that money does not go to the general fund. That money goes for the school to them to do what they want. But if they get less, they have to request it.
And that's why, Mr. Moderator, I am very uncomfortable with voting the top number. I like to vote on the number that we, the people here, would be responsible for. Don't muddy the waters by putting in the state and federal aid. Let's vote on what we are responsible for, what we're going to give the school department. My motion gives them over $600,000. That's a substantial increase. Right?
Could we ask school legal counsel to address this issue also?
Yes, you may.
Can you hear me? I'd just like to point out that...
Will you please identify yourself, sir?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Robinson. I represent the school district. I have represented them for many years. The school department is required by law to have a full budget appropriated. If this body chooses not to appropriate a full budget, then you more likely than not will be, as a result, in litigation. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Tights. While as to your tax implications, he's correct, you are required to adopt a full budget for the school department by law, in my opinion. If you do not do that, the school department, in my opinion, cannot spend it. The anticipated other money will not be an appropriated budget. Accordingly, they will be forced into a Carullo action, in my opinion, almost immediately. By law, the school department cannot deficit spend. The school committee can't, the superintendent can't, by law. You will force them into an immediate deficit, which will, in my opinion, my advice to them will be to sue the town. More likely than not, if I am correct, you will be right back here doing this again. Mr. Carter is correct. The town has always appropriated a full budget. In my opinion, that's what the law requires.
Thank you.
Yes.
May I speak now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sally Black, Tiverton School Committee. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out again and tell you that this is very, very difficult for all of us. It's pitting sister against brother and neighbor against neighbor. But I have to speak for the 1,977 people that have no vote, and that's the children in the school department. And I have to say that we have negotiated. We have worked hard all year. You've already heard there are no raises. And the administrators have concessions. And Council 94, which I worked on the negotiations, we have 12 meetings, they reopened their contract. They had a 2% raise. They came to the table and reopened their contract. I have to commend them. That's the salt of the community. I really mean that. So I have to say that it hurts me to see people hurting. My children live here. They're trying to pay their taxes, as we all are. But I have to tell you that I promise you we are working on negotiations with the teachers of cost containment, as the town has done for the past few years. If you want to know about the state aid, which I think we're all in a big mess about, why was I the only one up at the State House the other day to ask our representatives and senators what they're going to do about that, so we have a predictable formula in this town, so we can come before you people and authentically say, this is what we're going to get and this is what we need from you. This is all over the place and it's not right. And I was the only one up at the State House confronting them and asking them and telling them to pass a fair formula, because if you look at some of them, they're not fair for our town of Tiverton. Our town is a mixed community. It's not a wealthy community, and we all need their help and their support at the State House for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to microphone 3 and then to the auditorium.
Mr. Moderator, I move the question.
Okay.
Anybody want a second?
It's been seconded. Okay.
Wow, that's, I think he's got to decide.
Point of order.
Wait. I think you still have, you just not have the same speaker. I think that's time to do that. There's only the people who haven't spoken yet on the issue.
I would think you'd let him talk.
Okay. Motion's been made to move the question. This will stop debate on this amendment, and that requires a 2/3 vote to continue or not.
Well, as a practical matter, I think it's probably been chewed over pretty well so far. That's why I moved the question. I understand it has been seconded.
Well, we need to take a vote. Counters, please.
About a voice vote.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Will
Yes.
you please explain to the audience what a nay vote and a yay vote
Yes.
mean? That we are not voting on the amendment, that we are voting to whether or not we will vote or continue to discuss.
What we are voting on is whether or not, as you said, we will continue to debate this amendment, or if we will put it to vote.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
We need a 2/3 vote
Point
to
of
stop
order.
debate. Auditorium, yes.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much. I would like, before we continue this motion or someone seconds, I would like to say a few words, if at all possible, and be recognized.
Out of order, sir. We are voting at this point as to whether or not we will continue debate. A yes vote will move the question to vote. We'll move the amendment to vote. A no vote will move the question to continue debate. We need a 2/3 majority of individuals voting to accomplish this.
Please explain one more time that yes means no debate. Because I think
A 2/3 yes vote will mean we will stop debate. A 2/3 nay vote or no vote will say that we will continue debate. I'm sorry. It's reversed.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Just a point of information, I believe it requires a 2/3 vote for us to stop debate. If we don't get a 2/3 yes vote, then we continue debate.
Correct.
There we go. Well, Mike, you brought it up. He's been there under his, he must think he's got to go wrong.
Yes. We're checking to see, make sure we have a quorum. I'm sure we do. Counters, to your stations, please. The auditorium, please. All those in favor of moving the question forward, please raise your hand with the band.
You don't need it. Come on. Eyes have it. It's the only thing everyone's agreed on. It's the only thing everyone's agreed on. Just read the question.
You don't know how many people are in the auditorium.
Yeah, it's like 400.
Yeah, you gotta wait and see what happens.
Right, and he also got a nice the same story. It says every 1 to 2 years, it's got a big asterisk on the bottom. We're not, none of the formulas are going to apply unless you get 2 years of project. This would be. They didn't even ask you how we could do it 100 grand less. We don't vote.
Well, we don't want to keep my hand up for an hour.
If the vote itself, not this, but the vote is close, if it goes against it. If by chance we get out of here with a hand vote, you better tell them to keep their bums in the seats. Honey, they turned on us. We were trying to negotiate in good faith with them, and they turned on us. Plus the state aid, we'd be in trouble. We'd take the number. We would have to. We wouldn't have to. But that's what I was saying before. If they would just compromise, just not the whole pot. Okay, we're going to give you 3/4 of the pot, but they want the whole money. Yeah, no, absolutely. That they don't understand because they're playing for high stakes. You should ask Castor and Tracy's question. They would have gone into the tailspin. Just been asking him something. Just take
Auditorium. We need the auditorium vote count.
Too bad I didn't see this that soon. I would have had him get hit. Because they only have a limited range. We'd always pick up the rear school and get hit. Unless you can't hear it.
I already gave the question. Now we're just waiting for them to turn their votes in. We have a room count between the auditorium and here of 1311. The number of votes, people voting in the affirmative, is 1,074. At this point, I would say there's no need for a nay vote, huh?
Point of information.
Yes.
I'd just like to remind people, whichever way the vote goes, stay till the end. It's very important. Thank you.
Counters?
I would like to also ask all the school supporters here to stay to the very end because we do have to vote on the levy, otherwise our vote doesn't count. So please stay.
Okay.
Let's rock and roll. 1,500 people, that's enough.
We now,
That auditorium is stuffed.
okay, now we are going to vote on the amendment. A yes vote on this amendment. A yes vote on this amendment of 25,520,784. 82, I'm sorry. That $2,000 makes a difference. Big difference.
Stand up so they can see.
A yes vote will pass this amendment. At this point, all those in favor of this amendment, raise your hands and wait to be counted with the band on it. Counters, please.
Check on the screen. It's mixed. Steve Robbins.
Steve?
Steve.
No, 1,700, 1,300.
If it's like...
That's all. I know, you can't see everybody out there.
Attention. We are now ready for the no vote. In other words, voting no on this amendment means the amendment fails, and we move on to the next amendment. If this amendment passes, then we will go to the highest after that and vote on that. So okay, right now we are voting on, this is a no vote. If you do not approve this amendment, we go on and debate the next one up. All those in favor, all those opposed to this amendment, please raise your hand with a band.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Moran is saying they lost it.
We are not voting, we are just pointing to...
Chief? Ladies and gentlemen, we have the tally. With 1311 in the room, the yea votes, 564. The no votes, 541.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to call for a ballot vote. I'd like to call for a ballot vote, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator, in light of the vote that was taken, I would like to propose the following resolution. Whereas the town of Tiverton forecasts a substantial loss in total non-property tax revenues, which may lead to an increase in the tax levy by more than 4.5%. And whereas such loss in non-property tax revenues justifies exceeding the levy cap set forth in Rhode Island General Law 4452, as more specifically set forth in 4452D1. And whereas Rhode Island General Law 4452E requires that the majority of the electors present and voting at the town financial meeting shall also approve the excess levy. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the excess levy due to loss in total non-tax revenue is hereby approved.
Second.
Second.
Point of order. Point of order. Scott DeMello, Pierce Avenue. I believe Mr. Martin made a motion that we go to a ballot vote. You can't take up another resolution, and I seconded that motion.
Challenge the vote. Challenge the moderator. It's not close enough. We already asked that question.
Mr. Moderator, this is a pretty important vote, and
This-
that seems kind of close to me.
Okay.
And I think the fairness for everyone.
You're
to have a
right.
ballot
Please
vote.
sit down.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
No.
Point
I
of order.
have the floor.
Okay.
Please be seated. Please be seated, sir. For us to go to a ballot vote, we have to vote on that. It'll be a majority vote. Ready in the auditorium? Can I have the counters? Can I have the counters?
Point of information.
Yes.
Patrick Latuke, 97 Preservation Way.
Please.
Is this 2/3 or is it majority?
It's a majority vote.
Okay, thank you.
Just for
By a
clarity,
show of by a raise of hands, counters, please. All those that want to go to a ballot vote, please raise your hand.
a ballot
In the
vote
affirmative.
on what?
On
the last question?
the ballot vote will be on the Deb Paul's amendment. All those in favor of going to a ballot vote, please raise your hand.
Point of information.
We're in the middle of a vote right now.
Yes, the first number. First vote is 1354. I'm just saying.
There are probably other people who didn't
There's
vote.
some number wrong. Because
Because you only have 1,100 who
at
voted.
maximum, you can only put five.
Only 1,000 people voted.
Right.
Where is 1,300?
They didn't count
Two
it.
from our wards. George, who was running for office, he came to me, the guy who put a vote for 600.
Right.
I said, oh, do you know him?
No, he's not here. You see him?
I was so great.
He was 4,000 votes. No, this was a voice vote. I took a voice vote.
Yeah, this was last time it was voice vote.
Yes,
Everyone
they
wanted to
go to a
go
hand.
home. It was unanimous at the
Right,
end,
they
and
didn't want to
everyone
go to a hand.
There was a what, like 6, right?
No, but they did a voice vote to determine whether it goes to a hand.
Oh, and everyone was tired, and everyone wanted to go home.
You would like to think.
See, that's how this town is divided. That's the question. Basically, it's
Okay. All those not in favor of going to a ballot vote,
against.
please raise your hand.
This is really an archaic way. But you know what? The alternative would be disaster. The lady in the red vest voted against this. Sorry, you can never trust it. I mean, you can't trust it. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, this is the Regal's votes. Yeah. Oh, it's pretty sharp. It's got some procedural things. What's that? It's doing something. Oh, Robert's a Ruru?
Oh, you're not talking about him?
No, we're talking about someone else.
Oh, okay, okay. So Roberts was
Hey, Ruru. Mr. Ruru. Hell, they don't know the difference. They got code names.
We have a tally. The yes votes, 526. The no votes, 569. It will not go to a ballot.
Mr. Moderator, may I be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Karen.
Thank you. I'd like to read, the Town Council President just made a motion, and I'd like to read a section of the charter, a financial town meeting, section 304. The docket, subsection 2, duties and powers of the moderator. The docket, as provided by the Budget Committee, shall be included as one line item on the agenda for the financial town meeting. The moderator shall now alter the order of the items within the Budget Committee's docket, and I'll ask everybody to turn to the inside yellow cover. The motion that was proposed by the Town Council President is not on the agenda, and the Budget Committee right now is in the middle of the docket. So I would ask for a ruling that it be ruled out of order.
Mr. Moderator, the resolve that I just put on the floor is necessary because of the vote taken, the previous vote, which is a vote that will exceed the 4.5% tax cap. The general law states that there also has to be a vote of those electors at the financial town meeting by majority to exceed that. The last vote to appropriate that money without this vote to exceed the tax cap would create a situation whereby we would have no ability to generate the money that was just appropriated. That's why this motion should be in order and allowed to be voted on, because it's prescribed by Rhode Island general law.
It's not on the agenda, Mr. Moderator.
I believe motions of this body can be placed on the agenda at this meeting. This meeting is not exclusively limited to dealing with matters that are put on the docket. They can be voted on by this body to be included.
We'll hear from Mr. Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The order of the docket, the charter, which is section 305 A, subsection 2, only prevents the moderator from altering the order of items within the Budget Committee's docket. Please, this body already voted last Saturday to change the order of the docket. The motion that's been made regarding the cap would be in order. This, although it sounds a bit strange, financial town meetings are not subject to the open meetings law as far as the idea about agendas and so forth. The open meetings law does not apply to financial town meetings. The idea being you're all here, the voters are all assembled, so your notice was to be here, and now you're here. So there isn't any problem with adding something, and I would be my legal opinion to the moderator that this motion by Mr. Boland is in order at this time because it's required by state law.
Mr. Moderator, may I be heard for one moment, please?
Say again, please.
Just so everyone in the room understands that appears as though that amendment passed, so the schools will be getting their money. This next vote, is to tax the people. And so anybody who doesn't want to see their taxes increase that amount.
Point of order. Point of order.
No further outbursts. Yes,
now.
Mr. Berg.
I believe Mr. Karen is sitting there as the Budget Committee Chairman. I don't believe the Budget Committee has taken a stance on this position. So if he would like to speak to this, I suggest that he needs to come down to the floor mic like everybody else.
Order. The motion on the floor is Mr. Boland's motion.
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Boland, will you please reread your motion?
It's a resolution.
Point of order, have we discovered, Mr. Moderator, have you given us a decision on whether or not this resolution is in order? Have you given us a decision on this?
The resolution is in order. It has been
Thank
given. It was legally given by Mr. Titus.
Whereas the town of Tiverton forecast a substantial loss in total non-property tax revenues, which may lead to an increase in the tax levy by more than 4.5%. And whereas such loss in non-property tax revenues justifies exceeding the levy cap set forth in Rhode Island General Law 4452, and more specifically set forth in 4452D1. And whereas Rhode Island General Law 4452E requires that the majority of the electors present and voting at the town financial meeting shall also approve the excess levy. Now therefore, it be resolved that the excess levy due to loss in total non-tax revenues is hereby approved.
So moved and seconded, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, can I make a comment from the room?
Now, we're going to vote on this resolve.
Mr. Moderator, can I make a comment from the auditorium?
We have a comment here, someone.
Auditorium, go ahead.
This is Jim Porter from
Please
Riverside
speak up.
Drive in Tiverton. Jim Porter from Riverside Drive in Tiverton. Well, I don't disagree with Mr. Boland's statement of the need to exceed the cap now that we have voted through Deb Polish's amendment. I do believe we should vote on all budget items because some of the other budget items could be reduced, which would not require going over the cap. So therefore, I please ask that this amendment that is put forth by Mr. Boland wait till all budget items are voted on and voted on at the end of the meeting.
Point of information.
Yes.
Sir, Mr. Moderator, could you advise us if we're going to bust the 4.5% state mandated cap with the amount that's just been approved? How much percentage over the 4.5% cap is that so that we might know what we're voting for? Thank you.
Mr. Robert, can you answer that question? It is not within my purview to do this. Mr. Roberts will have to answer that question.
Dave Robert, tax assessor. As it stands right now on the Deb Palish vote amendment, the projected levy sits at 7% with the net tax rate increase of 6.48%.
So in answer to the question, yes, it would exceed the tax, the cap.
Yes?
Yes, go ahead.
Laura Epke, Neck Road. If I'm correct, all we have done so far is appropriate monies for the school department. We have yet to appropriate any monies at all for the municipal side of the town. If I'm not correct, we have just voted, the first part we haven't even voted on a levy, but we have given ourselves a local appropriation of $20,879,040. The maximum amount that we can tax ourselves this year is $33 million. So I think we have to wait till the end, before the levy vote or after the levy vote.
May I be heard?
Microphone number 1.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Moderator. On this first vote that we took on Deb Pollock's amendment, Joe Maderas, Main Road, Tiverton.
Thank you.
You had given us a count in the auditorium of 1,300 and some odd people between this room and the auditorium.
Yes.
And you gave us 1,110 votes.
Yes.
There was a
Exactly
complaint on
1,110
this side that no one got counted. How can 200 people who came here to vote not vote?
Sir, that
Moderator,
does,
that's been taken care of.
that does happen. There is plenty of example in previous meetings that has happened.
Point of order.
Mr. Burke, you please.
Point of order, Mr.
In 1 minute,
Moderator.
please. Mr. Burke has the floor.
Point of order would take precedence, Mr. Moderator.
Go. Okay. Your point of order, sir.
My name is Paul Hill from Tiverton.
Can you speak up, please, sir?
Paul Hill from Tiverton, 25 Cutter Road. I address Mr. Boland's motion.
With respect, Mr. Moderator, that may not be a point of order, though.
That's not a point of order, sir.
Point of order is that 4452 D1 requires a certification by the Department of Revenue.
Sir, that is not a point of order.
I did not hear that Department of Revenue certification mentioned by Mr. Boland. Next point of order is when we look at the statute.
Sir, sir.
Section E.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
It is not a point of order.
Point
You
of
are
order.
trying to make an appoint. You are trying to make a motion or an amendment. It is not a point of order.
Point of order, I'm asking the chair to rule that
This-
the point of order is well taken. And what we have on section E of the statute.
Mr. Moderator.
Where the town financial meeting has to approve also what the town governing body did, there must be a 4/5 vote. And I didn't hear Mr. Boland mention that occurred either. It's by statute. I'm reading the law. I ask for your ruling that my point of order is well taken.
Mr. Moderator?
May I be heard?
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Moderator, may I?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Moderator, may I address the legal question from the point of order?
Yes, sir.
The point of order, as I understand it, is regarding the appropriateness of Mr. Boland's motion in light of the fact that the Department of Revenue has not given approval of the increase above the cap, and it is my opinion that that does not have to be done prior to the vote of this financial town meeting, but can be done subsequently to that. And we have a communication from the director of the department regarding the budget that they would, in fact, consider a request to exceed the cap that comes after the financial town meeting, if it's so given. I think it was well reported in the press, but I'll relate that members of the town, including the town administrator, a representative from the town council, myself, the town treasurer, the budget committee vice chairman, and the budget committee secretary met with the state requesting approval, and it was pointed out they would not give prior approval without a specific request. They would not give guidance, but they did in fact indicate that they would consider such a request after the fact. Therefore, it would be my legal opinion to the chair that Mr. Boland's motion is still in order.
Second point of order is that there must be a 4/5 vote for the governing body. We don't have that. And therefore, the town financial meeting doesn't have a 4/5 vote to approve, as Mr. Boland set forth. There's something missing.
Mr. Chairman,
the 4/5 vote, I ask the moderator to rule that it is well taken, that the 4/5 vote has not occurred.
Mr. Moderator, if I may address that, this has been dealt with repeatedly for some years now, and the fact is, it is my interpretation, and in fact, it appears that the State Budget Office in their officially adopted regulations concurs. That is an or. There is no fourth-fifth vote needed in a case where it is the financial town meeting that's making the financial decision. So that would not affect Mr. Boland's motion either, and it would still be in order.
Mr. Tights, the courts decide.
Mr. Moderator, I would say that this is no longer
The
a
courts
point of
decide
order.
what the law means, and that's, the legislature passes the words, and the court interprets what the words mean. That's where we are in this. Are you saying, sir, that the statute is unconstitutional?
He's not saying anything of the sort, and at this point, the matter has been taken into consideration and decision has been made. No further action is available on that. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Moderator, if I may speak to Mr. Boland's motion?
Yes.
While I agree with the rationality and reason for Mr. Boland's motion, and certainly when it comes to a vote, we'll vote to support it, I would suggest that given Ms. Epke's statements, that we table this motion until immediately after the vote on the municipal budget, and then re-raise it. And my rationale is because if we vote it now, and it gets voted down, then it requires, I believe, a 2/3 vote for reconsideration. Am I accurate in that? A reconsideration vote is 2/3, correct? Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I didn't get your ruling. My point of order is taken under the Rules of Order, Robert's Rules of Order 23. Have you ruled?
Sir, I've ruled that you are out of order, and the other information that you have provided for us has been the legal counsel has advised us that Mr. Boland was in order, and that it does not require forfeits. Therefore, sir, you are now out of order. Please return to your seat.
The point of order is well taken or not well taken. Not that I'm out of order. You must rule it's well taken or not taken according to Robert's rules.
It's not taken. Okay?
Well taken or not well taken.
It's not taken.
Not that I'm out of order. I'm perfectly in order under Robert's
Please
rules.
have a seat, sir. Thank you.
Point of information, are we voting on the motion to table, or are we discussing the resolution? I asked whether we're going to vote on the
Was
motion.
there a
to table.
second on that motion? Okay. We are voting, yes or no?
I'd just like to support that motion to table.
Right. Motion to table, not to table, so. You want to take it? All in favor, counters, please. We are voting on whether we should table Mr. Boland's resolve.
To a specific time in the docket, Mr. Moderator.
To such time as the docket has been gone through and a recall for the vote will be, for the resolve.
It was specific to after we make the vote on the municipal
right after we make
budget.
After we make the budget.
Point of information, Mr. Moderator, what are the implications in terms of whether it's a majority or more than a majority that requires Mr. Boland's motion to be reconsidered?
It would just be a majority.
Thank you.
So all in favor of tabling Mr. Boland's motion, resolve, please raise your hand. And this resolve will be tabled until we have voted the rest of the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, attention. We have a vote of 916 to table the resolve. It would be useless to have the nay vote, so we're all set. We're going to table that resolve. That being said, we still have one more amendment for the school department to deal with.
Which is?
And that is the school committee's amendment of $25 million.
No, excuse me, Mr. Moderator, point of order. Once the amendment passes, we need to go back to the main motion as amendment with my number and vote on that. That will set the budget.
The next amendment has to be voted on. It has to be brought up and...
I'm just officially withdrawing the school's amendment.
Okay. Now, the amendment that has been passed does have to be voted on
No.
as a main motion.
No.
Yes.
Mr. Moderator, point of order, point of
Yes.
information. So what we're doing now is based on the resolution that was passed at the beginning of last week that says once an amendment has been approved, we go directly to the main motion as amended.
Yes.
So those who, so what, basically
So
it's
those-
another vote on what we just
Right,
voted on.
Right, on the amendment, because it becomes part of the town. Okay.
So,
this vote.
Excuse me, just under this clarification, I take it back. I'm not withdrawing my amendment because.
It's just an amount. How can you now go for an amount higher?
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Bernanke, I believe you're not allowed to either withdraw or put forth a motion without a vote of the school committee, sir, even though you're the chairperson. Therefore, what's on the floor stays on the floor. Next point of order, if I may. Our vote last week said that any amendment that passes, we move directly to the original motion, which would be the Budget Committee's motion. Therefore, as amended, my apologies, as amended. Therefore, a yea vote for this would be voting in the affirmative of Ms. Polish's motion. A nay vote for it would be against it. Therefore, those that had questions about that passing for 23 votes have a second chance.
Could I ask the procedural question? Could I ask a question here? Now, this amendment, this is the entire amount. This is not add-on, it's not removing something. So basically, the entire amendment replaces the motion. There's nothing amended here. We are voting on the entire number, correct?
We're voting on Ms. Polish's numbers.
Correct.
Yes.
Which is the entire budget for the school department.
If I may, you have to vote on the original motion put forth by the Budget Committee as amended by Ms. Polish's because her amendment passed. That's right. Okay, that is what we're voting on. Okay? And anything else, any other motions that were put forth or amendments that were put forth will come into play should this be turned down.
There is no debate on this either.
Point of information.
Yes.
Am I correct, Mr. Moderator, that what we're voting on now is the fact that the official Budget Committee budget for the school committee has now been amended by Mrs. Polish's amendment?
Yes.
So you're now voting on the official Budget Committee recommendation.
We're now voting on the budget, the amended budget
As
committees.
amended, correct.
All in favor?
Time out. Oh.
We're going to have debate.
Mr. Moderator, can you be clear as to what an A vote does for the tax, for the budget amount, and what a nay vote does for the budget amount?
I can answer that.
No, Mr. Moderator, I'm asking you to.
Okay.
The yea vote will tell us that the school budget, well, the budget committee's budget, as amended, will become $25,520,782.
You already voted that.
If it does not pass,
With how much from local and how much from state federal?
according to the papers, a local appropriation would be $20,879,040, and the state and general aid would be $4,641,742.
Thank you, Mr.
General
Moderator. So a nay vote would mean we go back to the other resolutions, the other motions.
The other amendments.
So if you vote this up,
No, it doesn't go back.
it goes back to the amendments. If the ayes have it, we're done with the school committee budget, correct?
Yes.
If
A
the
yes
nays-
vote is my amendment.
Right. If the nays have it, then we go to the next motion in line, which I don't have it in, I think is Mr. Nelson's, but I don't, yes.
I don't know.
I have a point of order, please, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, sir.
My point of order, sir, is what have we accomplished so far this morning?
Well, we had accomplished.
We voted on an amendment. We approved that amendment. Do we really have to approve it twice?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
The resolves that were passed last week, Rule 5, as amended, okay? After passing an amendment, a vote to pass the main motion as amended will be taken without further discussion, allowing the voted amendment to become final for that particular motion and become part thereof.
And what would happen, Mr. Moderator, what would happen next if these people changed their minds and voted nay this time? Then what would happen?
Then we'd go on to the next amendment.
Then it would go on to the next amendment? So basically, the first time we voted it didn't matter. We didn't have to be here. Oh, thank you.
Counters, please. All in favor? You are out of order, sir. Please be quiet. I'm trying to do that, ma'am.
Just a point of information, a lot of people have left. I think we need a new head count.
We obviously have a quorum. All in favor of...
You're voting in favor of my amendment again.
No, the motion is.
You're out of order, and the next person will be asked to leave. That's 3 times you've come up to the microphone and have been out of order. Please refrain. Now, all in favor of the Budget Committee's recommendation as amended of $25,520,782, please raise your hand.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Because this is nuts. We shouldn't have one else. Well, it's, yeah, we can't vote twice on the same thing. Once you put it on, you've accepted that's the result. That should, I know it's the result. Reconsider what we did. Because that's
Like Mike Cronin called me and told me that the governor signed it.
Oh, okay.
Said you can't make a big deal out of the governor signing it. I said, why? He goes, if he doesn't sign this.
How you do it?
And he doesn't want to set a precedent.
Yeah, right.
They said, well, you know, I had a little press conference there, and you know, he mentioned, he goes, oh, no, don't mention anything about the governor signing. So you up front to get your FaceTime.
Well, I had to get out of my district when they made the count, so I wasn't involved. Plus, I got to walk around with my knee.
Yeah.
I sit down and get stiff. Last week I got too stiff.
I can't sit down. I screwed mine up. If I sit down, I got the brace off today.
Oh,
if
yeah.
I sit down, it will. I sit in the house, I sit up with my foot on the electrical box so I keep it straight. Gus goes, what are you doing?
It's kind of interesting. I'm sitting down in this spot, right? And get up to go to a phone call and come down with two people in my seat. I said, and they had moved my stuff and I said, oh, excuse me. And they were like, oh, well. And I'm like, you can sit there, it don't matter. I'll go in the back. They go, no, we'll go in the back and forth. So you could so cool. And it's this lady, Nancy Briggs. She writes articles every once in a while in the Providence Journal.
Oh, really?
And
Order.
I didn't mention it to her, but it seemed like she was rumored to run for like a rep seat or something.
All those
Years ago, like,
not in favor
yeah.
of the Budget Committee's total, the Budget Committee's recommendation as amended to $25,520,782. Please raise your hands. All those not in favor.
Democratic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was my district. Exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah. No way. Yeah, right.
We've already voted on it. This is absolutely insane. We screwed up when we did 5 the week before. How the hell do you turn around and vote again on the same thing you just voted on? Well, it's passed. If it's passed, it's passed. You don't vote again. Well, because there's a solution to it. I'm going to try to propose it. We're going to be right back to square one.
Attention. We have the results. The yes, 559. The no, 501.
Mr. Moderator, under resolve number 3 that we passed at the beginning of this, I wish to enter and alter a decision made at the first meeting, and that is that resolve number 5 be eliminated so that we don't create the same situation we just had here. If an amendment passes and changes a dollar amount, it makes that the motion that carries. We shouldn't vote twice on the same issue. We need to fix this now before we continue.
Point of order.
Second.
The only thing that Rule 5 changes is the fact that there'd be no debate. Robert's Rules includes that.
No, I'm not trying to stifle debate. We debated the issue before we voted on the amendment. If an amendment passes, it is the wishes of this group that become what is now the appropriation. We don't go back and vote on another number or another part of that. That would include it. That's what it should be. That's a proper way. We just wasted 15 minutes of your time to do a vote that we already voted on. That's not what the intent of this body. All I'm saying is that having voted for resolve number 5, and I will affirm or swear to that I voted in favor of that I will ask for a reconsideration of 5 and 5 be eliminated so that when we have an amendment to a motion, we vote on it and it becomes the vote.
But eliminating number 5 doesn't do that. Number 5 is just a reaffirmation of the Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, we can vote to abide by our own rules and bypass that rule, and that's what this is. We do these resolves and procedural rules so that we can modify. And I want to modify because I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world to vote twice.
Every motion.
Point of order. Roger Bennis, Narragansett Avenue.
Mr. Bennis, you have not been recognized by the floor, so don't continue to speak. I'm taking Mr. Boland's motion in consideration here. Yes, Mr. Bettis.
Thank you. Although I agree that resolve number 5 is a waste of time, I'm the one that made the first motion at the FTM last week to throw it out. I must also indicate that in order for a reconsideration vote, you need to come up with the number of voters present at the time resolve number 5 was passed last week and the number of voters that are present at the present time in order for that to be reconsidered. a subject for reconsideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for reminding me of that, sir. We are going to vote at this point. Go ahead with the auditorium, please. We can't hear you in the auditorium.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Bettis.
I thought, based on my statement, that you were going to give us the count last week when resolve number
Yes, Mr.
5
Bettis,
was passed.
but right this moment, I have someone in the auditorium that needs to address, and we have not got the audio for the auditorium at this time. Will you please, I am going to take care of that, sir.
Thank you.
161 Highland Road. I would like to point out that it is now 11:30, and the more we waste time revoting and revoting, the less we'll have to vote on the actual things that we need to deal with this time. I
Thank
do
you
not
for
think
that.
anybody wants to spend another weekend in this auditorium or high school.
We're not going to.
Mr. Moderator, may I address the
Yes, Mr.
procedural
Tice.
question? Last week, when the resolves were voted on, there were approximately 994 people present, 997 people approximately present. And at the moment, there are approximately 1,200 people present. So there are more people present, and a motion to reconsider is able to be done.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded that we remove Resolve 5 from the moderator's procedural rules. We're going to do a voice vote. All in favor of removing? We will first go with the auditorium. All those in favor in the auditorium of removing Resolve 5, say aye.
Auditorium, it's a trick question.
Mr. Moderator, point of information, point of order.
It's a trick question.
We're in the middle of a vote.
And I believe that the statement of the vote is wrong. First, we would have to vote to reconsider that motion, and then we could, technically speaking, that's the way it would need to be done.
Mike is right.
Sorry.
He's right.
Quick. Yes, yes.
And this needs to be sorted.
To reconsider. You are correct, Mr. Burke. And so, the vote first is to reconsider. Reconsider the result. A show of hands, all those in favor of reconsidering.
Yes. Ayes have it.
It looks like we're all going to be reconsidering.
Okay, now let's take the vote. To eliminate.
Okay, now. We're going to get the show of hands first from the auditorium.
The ayes have it in the auditorium.
The ayes have it in the auditorium. So, now, all those in favor, by a show of hands, to remove Resolve 5 from the moderator's procedural rules, please raise your hands. Okay, all people in here can put their hands down. All people in here can put their hands down. And the ayes have it all the way around. Now we go back to page 8.
But, Mr. Moderator, may I be recognized to make the first move?
Yes, Mr. Karen.
Budget Committee moves non-recurring expenses, $69,000.
Page 8, the Budget Committee has made a motion and it has been seconded for municipal capital budgets. Yeah. Non-recurring expenses, $69,000.
I'd like to make a motion to amend.
Moderator.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion.
Miss-
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make an amendment to that motion. I'd like the amendment to read $17,281,479. That's the remainder of the municipal side of the budget as recommended. Requested.
Second.
On the non...
Point of order,
I believe
Mr.
that
Moderator.
you're out of set there, sir. Mr. Karen has moved for the non-recurring expenses.
I'm
Not for
amending
the
that motion for the entire docket, sir. I agree with Mr. Karen's motion, but I am amending that to include the rest of the docket, the rest of the municipal docket. One shot, one vote.
I don't think we can do that.
Mr. Moderator, this was ruled out of order last week.
Mr. Moderator, this has been done in the past. It's been done for many, many years in a row, and I see no reason why it can't be done today.
Point of order, isn't the council supposed to be second for amendments?
Yes, it is, but the council is not objecting to the amendment to vote on the remainder of the budget. So we relinquished the floor to Mr. Martin at that time so that he could propose voting on the remainder of the budget.
As requested by the council.
I believe it's going to take 2 votes, Mr. Moderator. I think the first vote is going to be to take the remainder of the budget because our resolve says if we wanted to do that, it has to be done by a majority vote. So a vote to take the remainder of the budget would be in order, then a vote on the proposal for the number.
Do I have any discussion on Mr.
I'd like to make an
Martin's?
amendment to Mr. Martin's amendment, motion.
I think, Mr. Moderator, I would suggest that because I would suggest that we first vote on whether or not we're taking the rest of the budget in its entirety before we take amendments, because we first need to pass the first to take the budget in its entirety. And I think that was a resolve that said it needed a majority vote of the body before we could do that.
By a show of hands, starting with the auditorium.
Mr. Moderator, questions on the second?
Yes.
Mr. Moderator, Mike Carrero, Brackett Avenue, Tiverton, Rhode Island High School, class of 72. Could you explain to me and to the body, included in this, this amendment, did we cut out the visiting nurse, which many senior citizens retire on, which I rely on? When a loved one is sick and you're out of the area, the visiting nurse is available. And number 2,
point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Number 2,
we're talking on whether we're going to amend them.
And
we're
number
going to
2,
go along with that. If he wants to discuss that later, Mike, I'd be glad to discuss it with you. It's certainly included.
And the is
Debate
that
amongst yourselves is not allowed now.
and is the town
At this point, sir,
the town planning position, is that included in that?
the motion on the floor, sir, is whether or not will take the remainder of the budget.
In one, okay, all right, I'll be back.
Mr. Moderator, last week, your chair ruled that this type of amendment was out of order. This week, are you ruling different?
Mr. Moderator?
May I?
No.
I'll wait.
Please be seated.
I won't sit, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, may I answer the question?
Yes,
about
please.
the out of order? The motion was out of order last week to take it because it was part of 2 motions. One, the school department budget was already on the floor. So a motion to take the rest of the budget all at once was out of order for the timing. At this point in time, there is no reason why it would be out of order.
Thank you, Mr. Titus. Now,
Point of information, can we just have
I'd
Mr.
like to-
Martin's number again? We
I'd
missed
like
the
to-
number.
I'd like to amend Mr. Martin's
Point of
motion.
information.
Not at this time, sir.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Martin's number.
Just if we could get Mr.
Mr.
Martin's
Moderator, I think we need to take the first vote
Exactly.
before we continue with any numbers.
Exactly. I will announce Mr. Martin's numbers after the votes are taken. You're not voting on any numbers at this time. You are voting on whether to take this budget all in one swoop right now. Consider it all in one swoop. So, all those in favor of taking the complete budget as is, not as is, but taking it all at once,
Take the lump sum.
please raise your hand.
Say yes.
Counters? Okay, don't need the counters. Auditorium? Okay.
Now you can take it.
The ayes have it in the auditorium, the ayes have it here.
Now you can take numbers.
Now we'll go to Mr. Martin's amendment.
I'd like to amend Mr. Martin's amendment. Make a motion
You can
that
talk
will
to me.
not change the bottom line.
Talk to me.
Will not change the bottom line. I'd like to move 20,000 from the streetlight account to the sand and salt account in the highway. This would, the price of salt has been going up, and the highway superintendent indicates that he's not going to have enough money this year to do the sanding and salting of the roads. The street lights, I think we have more than enough that could be taken out to make the difference.
Sir, that amendment or motion is out of order. You can only do the bottom line numbers at this point.
You can't change an account from one account. Can't modify
What is-
one account.
What is
And then
being,
change the other
what is
account.
up at this point, sir, is whether or not we will amend the budget in total by Mr. Martin's figure.
How can we change the items in the total budget?
You cannot.
Point of information, Justin Katz, Albert Terrace. Anybody who...
1 minute, please, Mr. Katz.
Pardon me?
1 minute, please. I'd like to recognize the gentleman in the middle.
I'd like to make a motion to amend his numbers to 16,732,238.
Repeat that, please.
16,732,238.
How many more motions?
Could you state your name, please?
Curtis Swinehart, Briarwood Avenue.
So, you are looking to amend Mr. Martin's numbers from 17,281,479 to 16,732,738?
Yes.
Thank you.
738 or 238? 238.
238, okay.
What's that? Is that the budget committee?
There was a second?
Point of information, these numbers, for people who are wondering, appear on the docket on page number 7. The previous speaker moved the appropriated for this year, and Mr. Martin moved the requested. That's the middle column. The Budget Committee's recommendation is the far right column. Those are the 3 numbers currently on the table, and you have them in your docket on page 7.
Okay. And, yes, ma'am.
If no one else has a third amendment, I'd like to speak to the last amendment on the floor.
I'd like to make the last amendment to this because it'll be the first one voted on, and I'd like to amend that figure to be $17,281,480.
Second.
It's been seconded, okay. Yes.
Laura Epke, Neck Road. Laura Epke, Neck Road. I'd like to speak in favor of Mr. Bowen's amendment, although it's only $1 more. I would like to point out that that number of $17,281,480,000 was essentially approved unanimously by the town council. It funds economic development, which I think is very important. It pays our bills. It funds visiting nurses. It keeps our services as we know them. And I strongly urge a yea vote.
Mr. Moderator, I'll yield, because I was just going to echo what Laura just...
You yield? Yes, Ms.
My
Black.
turn, Mr.
Yes.
Sally Black again. I'd like to come up and support Mr. Boland's motion after going to all the Budget Committee hearings and hearing all the debates and going to all economic development meetings. These are a group of people that are trying to move the town forward thoughtfully, smart growth and smart spending, and also all the other things they speak about. And wise men through the years have said societies will be judged how they treat their people from the dawn to the twilight of their lives. And I think we want to be that kind of community and support the town council's budget that will fund the visiting nurses and all of the other things we've heard about. Thank you.
Mr. Katz, you're up next.
Okay, I'm not going to go into the legal argument of why going over the levy is still illegal, but it is. I just want to point out to everybody that this amendment will increase the tax rate to $15.40. It currently stands at $14.35. That's more than $1 increase per thousand. That's a $4,740 bill every year, $346 more, and it's a 7.88% increase of the levy. Come on.
I thought it was 22.
It's far from 22.
Where's the 22? I thought it was 22%.
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Ann Parker. I was just wondering if we could have a comparison of the different resolutions as to how much each one would be in adding to our taxes this year.
Resolution.
Including the increase because of the school committee's increase in budget.
Mr. Roberts? The tax assessor had to leave, so we don't have those numbers for you.
I have them if it would be helpful. Mr. Moderator, may I be heard?
Yes.
Does the tax assessor have those numbers?
Pardon?
Does the tax assessor have those numbers or not? Because I have them right
He's not
here.
here. He's at the leave.
Okay. I mean, I can answer that in about 30 seconds.
Mr. Moderator, I would suggest that's the role of the tax
No,
assessor,
no,
not the
that
Budget Committee.
Would not be advisable.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
Cecil Leonard, Neck Road. I want to support Mr. Boland's motion. The budget is bare bones, but will support those essential elements of the town government. And I urge everyone to support that number. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Mr. Moderator, Mike Burke from Durfee Road. I'm just standing to reiterate the support that Mr. Leonard gave. The budget that had been presented stripped away a lot of essential services. To think that we don't need a sound economic development committee and a sound full-time planner in this town when we're in such a strait right now is, to my belief, ludicrous. And to cut out essential services to some of our most vulnerable population when we know that the $500 that we give to the women's resources and the total of about $9,500 that we give to 2 visiting nurses associations, and the $2,500 that we give to Newport County Mental Health, and the $5,500 that we give to East Bay Community Action, comes back to us probably hundreds fold in the amount of money they invest in the people in our community by providing those important services. Hopefully, those who may vote these down won't ever have to use those services.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, Tom Parker off of William Barton Drive.
Yes.
I am against Mr. Boland's amendment. I support the Budget Committee recommendation of $17,030,072. First off, I would note that that was passed by a vote of the duly elected Budget Committee on a 6-5 vote. You know, we lost, the other side went 6-5 last year. We had the good sense not to whine about it like the folks this year are doing. Duly elected people. Also, I'll note that that's almost a 2% increase over what we voted for last year. Hey, listen, this is the worst financial crisis since 1933. We're looking at an 8% increase in your taxes. Oh, by the way, a lot of people in this room are on Social Security. They didn't get a COLA this year. They're not going to get a COLA next year, and you need 8% to keep them going. As Mr. Katz said, give me a break. What are you thinking about? Okay, remember this, 8% increase in your taxes. We got 2% for the, we got 2% additional. We've level funded everything. I'd remind the town council when we're talking the $5,000 for the visiting nurses, you approved $4,800 for a fence on Bulga Marsh 2 weeks ago, as well as $10,000 to redo the gym in to review the floor in the basketball gym here. So, let me reiterate, go for the, I recommend voting against that and supporting the Budget Committee recommendation of $17,030,072. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr.
if I may
Moderator.
respond to that, if I may respond, may I be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Gunn.
The funding for the fence at the Bulgamarsh Recreation and for the surfacing and the painting of the courts were a grant, was a grant from DEM. It was not.
Order.
Mr. Moderator, I'll also note that those visiting nurses are also grants. They are, it's not the government's business. They are charity. If you want to give the visiting nurses, you can do so. It's not the government's business.
Order.
My point is that they were not paid for by town funds.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nick Chungus, Main Road. I also want to speak in favor of Mr. Boland's amendment, but I also wanted to agree with Mr. Parker that we need to be much more sensitive to folks who are retired, to folks who are on limited incomes right now, and I would challenge the town council over the next year to look more aggressively at abatements for people who are in those kinds of situations.
Those systems are in place, Mr. Saunders.
Mr. Moderator? Mr.
Yes.
Moderator? Kim Sutherland, Fury Ave. I think that reducing our taxes on the backs of our most vulnerable citizens is deplorable. I agree with Mr. Burke when he says that I hope that you never have to use those services if you're the one that is hoping to cut them from the town. I move to vote on the amendment. Mr. Moderator?
That was a motion to move the question.
Okay. We need a 2/3 vote to cut off debate. Counters? That was a motion to move the question, yes? Yeah, it was. Counters, there has been. Well, we'll do a show of hands, okay? So, this is the way it is. There has been a motion made to move the question, stop debate. All in favor of stopping debate and moving forward and vote? Raise your hand. We'll get the auditorium first.
Let's get a picture of this.
Okay, we have it. The ayes have it. Okay. Now we're ready to vote. All in favor, counters, please.
Please explain the motion.
I will.
17,281,480.
Counters, please. We are voting on Mr. Boland's amendment. And remember, once this is voted on, it doesn't get voted on again. This amendment passes or fails on your votes, as it is. Mr. Boland's amendment to the budget, $17,281,480. All in favor, please raise your hand. Keep it up until I motion otherwise. Before the result. Attention. All those opposed to Mr. Boland's amended figure of $17,281,480 for the budget, please raise your hand.
I just want to remind everyone, please stay until we vote on the levy. Do not leave.
I'm going to move to
Once this vote is announced, and the people, ladies and gentlemen, once this vote is announced, I ask that you stay on because we still have some business to attend to. And the votes are 610 in the affirmative, 325 in the negative. The amendment carries.
Mr. Moderator, at this time I'd wish to have the resolve put back on the table. Whereas the town of Tiverton forecasts a substantial loss in total non-property tax revenues, which may lead to an increase in the tax levy by more than 4.5%. And whereas such loss in non-property tax revenues justifies exceeding the levy cap set forth in Rhode Island General Law 4452, and more specifically set forth in 4452D1. And whereas Rhode Island General Law 4452E requires that a majority of the electors present in voting at the town financial meeting shall also approve the excess levy. Now, therefore, it is resolved that the excess levy due to the loss in non-tax revenue is hereby approved.
Mr. Moderator, I second that motion.
Mr. Moderator, may I speak?
Yes, you may speak.
Thank you. Just to be clear, this vote, okay, is basically what's authorizing all of us to tax ourselves. And that's what this vote is. If this vote fails, then we're limited to the 4.5% tax cap. If this vote flies, we're up at around 8%. I just want everyone in this room to understand, if this vote fails, we stay at the 4.5% cap.
Laura Epke, Neck Road, unless somebody else wants.
Go ahead.
Laura Epke, Neck Road. If this motion fails, it may or may not be at the 4.5%. I would think, and I would ask Mr. Tights, if this motion fails, do we have to revisit the appropriations that we've made?
This is something that's never been determined one way or another concretely by the court, whether this additional motion is necessary. I certainly believe it is useful. It would be my advice that, yes, if this motion failed, that we would have to go back and revisit the budget items. So I think this vote is necessary, certainly advisable, even in light of the votes that we've made.
Thank you. I would like to then urge the Assembly to respect the votes of people who voted to appropriate certain monies, knowing full well that they were taxing themselves for those appropriations. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Seeing no other speakers on this, I would move the question.
Second.
All those in
Wish you
favor of
wouldn't.
moving the question? Counters? Counters? Voting on Mr. Mullins.
Take a hand vote. Don't even count. Take the hand vote.
Okay, folks. The vote is on Mr. Mullins' resolve, and I vote will accept it, and they vote will pass it away, never to be seen again.
And I vote will be in favor of Mr. Boland's motion to exceed the cap. And
All those in favor of Mr. Boland's resolve, please raise your hand.
and keep it up until counted.
Attention, all those opposed to Mr. Boland's resolve, please raise your hand. I ask again that once this vote is announced, that you stay on for a few more minutes. We have some more unfinished business. Ladies and gentlemen, I have your attention. We do have the results. All in favor of Mr. Boland's motion to exceed the cap? The yeas are 556. The nays are 344. At this point, we will go into the resolves that we missed last week. Taxpayer resolution.
I'll be back. I'm going to go check on that.
Whereas during fiscal year 2010-2011, the town is projected to experience a decrease of state aid from motor vehicle taxation, approximately $1.4 million. And whereas the town may recoup all or part of this amount by local taxation, proposed real and tangible property increase approximately $1.35 million. And whereas there is a possibility that the state may fund all or part of the projected decrease of state aid from motor vehicle taxation, which would have the effect of local overtaxation. And whereas there is also a possibility that the state will allow the town to increase the local motor vehicle tax to recoup all or part of this amount, which would have the effect of double taxation, possibly without regard to the state cap. It is therefore resolved that any revenue the town receives from state aid or local taxation related to motor vehicles above and beyond the anticipated local motor vehicle tax amount of $1,188,000 shall be refunded or credited to taxpayers on a pro rata basis of the fiscal year 2010-2011 real property and tangible property tax rolls.
Second.
It has been seconded. By a show of hands, all those that are in favor of this
Point of order.
resolve. I'm sorry. We're open for discussion.
Point of order, I believe the person who proposed the amendment gets the first. Okay, I'll just say all the money that has been appropriated is appropriated. That's not going away based on this. All this does is say if we get more money than what we expect for car tax from the state, we get that money back on our taxes. It doesn't just become more money to spend.
It doesn't become spending money.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
On this resolution, I've got a lot of problems with it. Let me explain it to you first. First of all, there's a lot of possibilities, mays and whatnots. That is what it is. If you get car tax, you get car tax. But the most insulting part of it is that in this town, according to the last census, there are 6,500 homes. 23.8% are occupied by renters. They're not homeowners. They're not property owners. And while they do have automobiles, and they're taxed on those, why should it be that the taxes that are paid on their automobiles are transferred to people who own property? I find that to be discriminatory. That you're taking, it's actually taxation without representation. All right, tax me on my vehicle, but I don't get the benefit of it. It goes to people who own $4 million homes.
Yes.
Come on, let's get real.
Yes, ma'am.
Laura Epke Neck Road.
Yes.
I would agree with Mr. Cotta and associate myself with his remarks. I would also like to know if the legislation gives the authority back to cities and towns to tax the full value of cars. It is my understanding and my belief the only body that can appropriate a tax upon themselves is this body. Am I correct in that, Mr. Tights?
It depends on what the General Assembly does. I know you're going to love my usual yes or no on this one, but if the General Assembly simply gives us authority to tax that we did not have, you're right. We would need a special financial town meeting to levy the tax. If the General Assembly changes what they're refunding back to us then that would not require it, since it's not a separate tax. They're just the General Assembly determining, like other state aid, how they are dividing it up. So it could be either way.
Okay, so what my point is, if we get the authority, the town gets the authority to tax motor vehicles, we're going to have a special financial meeting to tax our motor vehicles so that we can spend the money to have a financial town meeting, create the tax bills so that we can refund the money to ourselves.
Yes.
I think it's foolish. The other item that I have issue with is this $1,188,000 is an estimated motor vehicle tax. If I read this resolution correctly and it's approved, and that motor vehicle tax actually comes in $5 over that amount, we're going to go through the exercise and the cost of rebating $5 to how many homes?
6,500.
I urge a no vote. This has not been thought through and vetted.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, Mr. Ball.
I urge that this tax resolution be defeated. And the reason is, no one is spending additional monies that are coming into town. You just went through an exercise and set a budget for next year. That is the amount of money that will be spent by this town, up to that number. Anything that comes to this town as a matter of revenue will be deposited in the general fund. If the general fund exceeds its baseline, it has always been used to offset taxes. It will continue to be that way. We have no ability to spend beyond what you people have appropriated at this financial town meeting. So don't think that money goes and gets spent somewhere. It gets put into the general fund, which is going to be used for the taxpayers in this town by their vote at the next financial town meeting or subsequently. But it is not going to be decided to be discriminately used for any purpose for anything. That's not how it works.
Yes, sir.
Curtis Weinhardt, Briarwood Avenue. I'd like to point out that the fact that that money is already taken out of the budget is means that we've essentially already moved the funds from the car tax to the real estate tax. Yes, we have. By allocating the money from...
We don't have it.
But we've taken it out of the budget already, so we're essentially taxing ourselves an extra $1 million to pay for stuff that we assume isn't going to come in. If it does come in, we shouldn't have to pay that tax because it's money that we've already allocated.
Yes, Mr. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, this financial meeting just voted to levy a tax on itself of about 8%, okay? In estimates that the tax assessor gave at a public meeting, I believe, of the council, if the exemption is removed and all of our cars get taxed at the full value, the approximate amount of money is a little over $1 million, which is about a 3% amount of the levy, okay? So we just voted an 8% tax increase approximately, and this amount of money, depending on how it comes in, is very well maybe ballpark 3%, maybe a little better than 3%. That would have the effect of reducing the 8% amount we just voted to down to about ballpark 5%, okay? Now, that's the first point I'd like to make, is that that's what this tax resolution will do, okay? The second thing is that I'd like to argue is that it is true that if that money comes in, it will go to the general fund. That's absolutely true. It will not just be spent this year. It cannot be spent this year. But I can guarantee you, I've sat on this committee for 6 years, okay? And when that money, next year, when we do our budget cycle, that $1 million, or whatever amount of money it is going to look like a windfall, and the property tax cap what next year will be 4.5%, is going to ride on top of that amount because we're going to have general funds to offset. If you look at the page 3 in the docket where the levy's calculated, this money will now then reappear in the negative numbers below where the expenditures are. And when that, page 4. And when that happens, okay, it allows the government to plan next year's budget, including the $1 million expenditure, and then still work its way up toward the tax cap next year. I urge all voters to support this taxpayer resolve. It has a chance of taking an 8% tax increase that we just voted here and turning it into a ballpark 5 if that money comes in. Otherwise, I can almost guarantee that it will be viewed as a windfall in the budget cycle next year, and it will be built into the budget. We're still going to see an increase next year, and the tax cap will ride on top of this amount of money. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, point of information.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr.
Mr. Moderator, first, this resolution should be voted down. The Budget Committee itself has a proposed resolution, and it's number 5, which does say exactly that any monies received by the town for reimbursement shall be added to the budget, to the general fund. And as Mr. Boland said, would be available next year, etc. Now that is a Budget Committee resolution that I believe was voted at least by 6-5, and now I hear the chairman taking a contrary position without a further vote of the Budget Committee. So I would say, vote this down, but indeed, vote in favor of number 5 of the Budget Committee resolutions when indeed that it comes up for a vote. I'm sorry, my name is Louise Durfee, and just Mr. Moderator, it's pronounced Durfee. It's okay?
I'm sorry, I made that mistake last week.
No, that's fine. I have no problem with
Mr.
that.
Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Burke.
I just have a question partially based on Ms. Durfee's statements. I would like to know if the opinion that was just stated by the Budget Committee chairperson is his own personal opinion or that was approved for him to make by his Budget Committee.
That was my personal opinion as a taxpayer.
Then you should have been down on the floor to do that.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Gonzalo.
Jim Gonzalo, Town Administrator. The tax cap next year is a very simple calculation. The tax cap will be this year's appropriation, or this year's levy, plus 4.25%. The revenue that we will receive has nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
I move, Cecil Leonard, Neck Road, I move the question.
Mr. Moderator, will you allow a new speaker a chance? Instead of the games?
Sir, there has been a motion to move the question, in other words, to cut off debate on this item.
Didn't hear a second.
I did. It was seconded several people. So by a show of hands.
Mr. Leonard, would you withdraw your motion for one speaker?
Oh, did you see that? He was sitting on something.
I guess it's kind of a moderator's call, right? I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot do it. We have a motion to cut off debate on these resolve. All in favor of stopping the debate, please raise your hands. Okay, debate is cut off. Now may I have a motion that we vote on this? We will have a vote on a show of hands. on taxpayer resolve, accepting the taxpayer resolve that we've just discussed. All in favor of passing?
Yes is in favor.
A yes vote will pass the resolve, a no vote will not pass the resolve.
That's it.
All those in favor, by a show of hands, please raise your hand. Okay, all those opposed to the taxpayer resolution, raise your hand. And the noes have it. The resolve does not pass. On to the Budget Committee Chair. You have resolves.
Budget Committee moves, as stated in the docket, the Budget Committee resolutions number 1 through 5 on page 3.
Second.
Any debate?
I urge you to please stay for 5 minutes more so we can do the levy vote when we're finished with these resolves.
Okay. There is debate on the floor for the Budget Committee's resolutions. Seeing no debate, by a show of hands, all those that accept these resolves. All those opposed to the resolves. Motion carries.
Go, Nancy. Nancy, let's do the levy vote.
And now we have a levy vote.
That's it. Well done. Come on, Nancy.
And will the town clerk please
It's starting to fly along.
read the levy?
Hurry. Let's go.
Okay, the tax vote. Resolved that the electors of the town of Tiverton qualified to vote upon any proposition to impose a tax or for the expenditures of money in the town meeting legally assembled on the 8th day of May 2010, continued to May 15th, 2010, hereby order the assessment and collection of a tax on the ratable real estate and tangible personal property and an excise tax on all registered motor vehicles and trailers for the privilege of such registrations in a sum not less than $34,590,623 or more than $34,790,623. Said tax is for ordinary expenses and charges for the town's proportion of the state tax and for other purposes authorized by law. The assessor having, in accordance with the provisions of Title 44, Chapter 5, General Laws of 1956, as amended, assessed and apportioned said real and personal property tax on the 31st day of December 2009 at 12 o'clock midnight, and said excise tax shall be apportioned on a pro rata basis during the calendar year of proration based on the ratio that the number of days such vehicle or trailer is registered is to the number of days in the calendar year of proration according to law. Shall upon completion of said assessment, date, certify, and sign the same, and deliver to and deposit with the town clerk's office on or before the 15th day of June 2010. The town clerk, upon receipt of said assessment, shall forthwith make a copy of the same and deliver it to the town treasurer, who shall forthwith issue and affix to said copy a warrant under his hand directed to the collector of taxes of said town, commanding said tax collector to proceed to collect said taxes of the persons and estates liable therefor. Said tax, when paid in one annual installment, shall be due and payable on the first day of August 2010. Taxpayers may elect to make payments quarterly for real estate and personal property tax when over $100, in which case payment shall be due on the first day of July and October of 2010 and the first day of January and April 2011. Payments not made by the 10th of the month in which due shall be assessed interest at the rate of 12% per annum from July 1st to the date of payment on the unpaid quarterly balances. Adopted at the financial town meeting of May 8th, continued to May 15th, 2010, given under my hand and seal of office on this 15th day of May, and it includes a motor vehicle levy of $1,188,000. True attest copy.
So
Do I have
moved.
a motion? So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any debate?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Before you finish your business, I personally, and I think the Assembly would personally like to thank you for the excellent job that you did today. While you may have gotten off the rocky start,
Order.
thank you.
Gotta get to the vote.
All in favor? All opposed? Carried. Financial town meeting is adjourned until next year.